Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Old-fashioned upbringing, couldn't help it. First things first, the right is not split in this country. The Conservative Party is not on the right in any measurable way. 14 years that brought us the highest tax burden since 1947, 14 years that saw mass immigration, legal mass immigration on a scale hitherto never even dreamt of, 14 years that saw illegal immigration, small boats crossing the Channel, and the government completely incapable of dealing with it because they couldn't face up to what membership of the European Convention on Human Rights was all about. And 14 years that saw net zero enshrined into law by a Conservative government and Boris Johnson, Theresa May, as evangelical about net zero as the current Ed Miliband. We take the view that if we're going to be using gas, if we're going to be using oil in this country till 2050, and even the most zealous net zero types accept we'll be using these commodities for years to come, our view is if we're going to be using them, we may as well produce them ourselves in our own country and genuinely become energy independent. And our platform is to re-industrialise Britain. We've closed down our steel industry. You know, we think closing down a steel industry is good because it means our national CO2 output is down, and all that happens is the plant closes in Redcar, the plant closes in South Wales, it reopens in India under lower environmental standards, and then the steel is shipped back to us. So let's produce all the stuff we need in this country. Let's become not just energy independent, we could actually become an energy exporter. Right now, every day we import 10 to 15% of our electricity, and our industrial energy prices are between 4 and 6 times higher than America. Not only that, but everybody out there, and of course this hurts the poor more than anybody, we've had 20% subsidies on domestic electricity bills going on now for the best part of 2 decades. And it's a truth that no one dares tell. So look, net zero is a complete and utter disaster. If you want to have energy production that is very, very low in carbon output, there is only one way ahead. That is small, modular, nuclear reactors, dozens of them all over the country. It's the only way forward.
Okay. Well,
it's the only way forward. And you know, if you look at the way the Far East produces nuclear energy, we can do it a damn sight cheaper than we've ever done it before.
Okay. Well, that warms a Canadian's heart. And it's good to get warm in a convention centre that's this chilly because of the net zero restrictions. I'm afraid that even throwing the dog a bone, let's say, and saying, well, we're certainly not going to hit our 2030 targets because they were proposed by buffoons and liars. We're not going to hit our 2050 targets either. I'm dead serious. This is not good. And so I'm curious about how far this needs to be taken. I have because I also think, conceivably, that the environmentalist climate scam was really an offshoot of the Club of Rome Malthusian stupidity that is predicated on the presumption that resources are finite and that there's far too many people on the planet, and there's a terrible anti-human motivation lurking underneath all of that that's pessimistic and brutal and genocidal in its fundamental ethos. And I think it's kind of time for people who would like energy to be inexpensive and reliable and there for the poor to just end it. It's like no more carbon apocalypse mongering and terrorizing. And so I guess I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, the one thing that drives me absolutely possy is when I hear that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. That's what they tell us. That clearly is absolutely nuts. Now, there are times in our past when CO2 in the atmosphere has been much, much higher than it is today, and that's before people drove 4x4 Chelsea tractors. And I remember having this debate about 20 years ago. There was a man called Sir Patrick Moore.
Yes.
Very famous scientist, The Sky at Night, great character, very respected man. And I said to him about 20 years ago, I said, Patrick, what do you think about man's impact on the environment through CO2? He said, well, it's impossible to think man doesn't have some sort of impact. He said, but when it comes to carbon dioxide levels and when it comes to warming and cooling, he said, let me assure you that sunspot activity and underwater volcanic activity will always have a bigger impact on the environment than man himself ever can, and I very much stuck to that view. So I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you whether CO2 is leading to warming or not, but there are so many other massive factors. And Jordan, I was told that of all the CO2 that's produced every year in the world, only 3 to 5% of it is produced by mankind. So we do, as you rightly say, need to get this debate into a sense of perspective. And I sometimes think that the carbon dioxide hysteria has actually blinded us to other environmental disasters that are going on, such as the rape of our oceans and many other things. I'm an environmentalist in the old school sense and definition of that term. A bit more common sense, that's what we need.
Curious again, like in your view, you could make the case that stable, committed monogamy, heterosexual, child-centered monogamy, is the kind of long-term commitment to community, to sacrifice, and to future that's the fundamental unit of civilized society. And so I'm curious, Mike, what do you think about that?
Well, I may not necessarily be the best advocate for monogamous heterosexuality or stable marriage, having been divorced twice. But do I think family matters? Jordan, on the 3rd of June last year, as I was coming into London by car to go back into politics, having left it a few years before, my ambition was to get the United Kingdom to be a self-governing, independent nation. And for many, many years, I was pretty much on my own fighting that battle. The day we left the European Union, I thought, right, I've done my job. And that day on the 3rd of June, when I was coming back, thinking, well, this really rather comfortable, lovely life I've got is about to disappear, I thought, why am I doing it? And I came up with 3 words: family, community, and country. They're the things that matter to me above absolutely everything. And I have tried, in difficult circumstances, I've tried to make sure with both ex-wives that our children have had as stable an upbringing, given the circumstances, as they can possibly have. I think part of this, and this is important, about who we are as a country and who the West is, we've kind of forgotten that what underpins everything is our Judeo-Christian culture. And that's where we need to start. That's where we need to start. And if we recognise that, and if we value that, then I think everything comes from that. So yes, of course family matters enormously. Of course we need higher birth rates. But we're not going to get higher birth rates in this country until we can get some sense of optimism. And we need a complete 180 shift in attitudes. We've got to start telling young kids that hard work is good, that success is good, that there are no shortcuts in life, that making money is good. And what I see is we sort of disincentivize young people, and to think that another 1 million young people since the start of the pandemic are on disability benefits because they're suffering from depression and the doctors sign them off. We need some very, very big cultural changes. We've got to get that spirit, that sense of optimism back in the country. We had it in the late 1980s. We actually had it through much of the 1990s. That's what we have to recapture. And frankly, being led as we are by, God, doesn't Rachel Reeves just make you want to reach for the cry tissues? It's all so miserable. It's all so declinist. Frankly, the Conservatives have been no better. We need a change of attitude in Britain. And if we get that right, people will have more kids.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was short and sweet, and there's obviously many other issues that we should could discuss, and no doubt will. But I would like to thank you very much for coming and talking to us today, and to letting me harass you about these issues.
It's
very good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you, everybody.